Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley, and I am the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. What does it take for a company to thrive? I know this is a broad question, but up until recently, if you had said increasing safety, compassion, and mindfulness in the workplace, you might have been laughed out of the room. Fortunately, there has been growing evidence that these are characteristics of great companies that achieve growth, reduced attrition, and increased engagement from their employees. The guest on this episode knows a lot about how to improve a company's success through these measures. Scott Shute is an engineer by training who has worked at the executive level at top companies, including LinkedIn, where he has been employed both as the VP of Global Operations as well as his current role as the head of mindfulness and compassion programs. Scott has also written a superb new book that will soon hit the market both in print and in audio called The Full Body Yes. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Scott brilliantly combines the science of happiness and achievement with real stories from his work life and his personal life. The wisdom found on the pages of this book can easily improve one's life at work and at home, and I am grateful to Scott for having written it. So listen in as Scott and I have an engaging and user-friendly conversation about LinkedIn, mindfulness and compassion programs, and his great new book, The Full Body Yes. Scott Shute, welcome to Super Psyched.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I've been so looking forward to this. First off, just because I know you well, but my listeners don't, you are an engineer by training and rose through various positions at top companies, including becoming a VP of Global Operations at LinkedIn. You continue to work at LinkedIn, but now as the head of mindfulness and compassion programs. What are the mindfulness and compassion programs, and how did that happen?
Yeah. All right. Let's do it. So look, I've always been a bit of a dual agent in that I've had this career leading customer service organizations, basically. And at LinkedIn, I led all of the customer facing stuff that's not sales. So this big organization, like 1,000 people. But I've also had this really deep interest as a seeker. And so I found a path when I was about 13 that involved meditation, or really, I would call it something else, like contemplation, like connecting with something bigger. And it's been a huge part of my life. And I've been teaching since I was in college. But I've always kind of covered that part of me, at work. It's just, that's not something we normally talk about at work. But about 6 years ago, I realized that LinkedIn was such an open place. I mean, our CEO was talking about his own meditation practice using Headspace. I'm like, cool. Like maybe this is a place I can bring my own practice. And so I met with my friend who's the head of wellness. I'm like, hey man, do we do anything with meditation here? And he started talking to me, but he saw this look in my voice. He's like, oh, hang on. Do you do something? I'm like, yeah, I could do something. And he got super excited and I got super excited. And I went back to my desk and I did absolutely nothing about it for like 3 or 4 months because I was scared. Because look, when I came out as a meditator at 13, this is not something you talked about where I grew up. I grew up in rural Kansas, super rural Kansas. And so I had fear. And it was all this ego and fear. Like, what are people going to think of me? What is this going to do for my brand? Am I going to get shunned? Am I going to get in trouble? And finally, I got over all of that and just led a session. I led one session on a Thursday afternoon. And there was one guy there. That's it. And I'm sure that dude was just as terrified as I was. I never saw him again. But
oh, no.
The next week, there were 3, and then there were 5. It became a regular thing. And then there'd be special events like, hey, the marketing team is having an offsite and they're doing breakout sessions, 80 people each. Like, could you lead a couple of the breakout sessions? Yeah, sure. Or the CFO is having a summit, 400 people. Hey, Scott, could you kick it off with a practice? Like, yeah, sure. And so then I just became known as like the meditation exec. Like it just was part of me, my identity, which is what I wanted because that's who I am outside of work. But for me, then the tipping point was about almost 3 years ago now. Our CEO at the time, Jeff Weiner, was giving the commencement address at Wharton and talked about compassion. in a commencement address, you get one piece of advice. What's your one big piece of advice? And he's basically like, hey, look, if you're going to be successful in life, in business, be compassionate.
So good.
That's pretty cool. He had spoken about compassion at safe, I'm making air quotes, safer environments like Wisdom 2.0 and things like that. But this is Wharton. This is pretty buttoned down. And then the next 2 or 3 times he's on TV, this is all the reporters want to talk about is compassion. I'm like, wow. All right, it's time. Look, it's time for me. I'd been volunteering as our head of our mindfulness program for 4 years. We didn't have one before that. Myself and a bunch of volunteers kind of pulled it together. And it was time for me to like put my money where my mouth was. But it was also time for the company. Because if we send 15,000 people back to their desk with this message that compassion's the most important thing that they can do, what does that even mean? And so I made a pitch to our CEO and our head of HR, and with great support, essentially created this role, head of mindfulness and compassion programs, where we're trying to change work from the inside out by mainstreaming mindfulness and operationalizing compassion.
That's just phenomenal. And before we get into your amazing book, Full Body Yes, which I have a copy of right here and enjoyed most thoroughly, many people might be baffled by the idea of mindfulness and compassion at a company. What is the business case for having mindfulness and compassion as a program within the company?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it comes down to a simple question I would ask the C-suite. I would ask, do you care about your employees? And I don't mean it in a smart alecky way. Back when we were building the pyramids, there were kings and slaves, and you didn't care about the employees. They were interchangeable. But look, in today's world, in the information age, a company like LinkedIn and many others, we don't have hard assets. We're not mining for copper. We're not selling commodities. All we have is our people. That's it. That's our only asset. And the better our people are, the better our products are going to be. So it starts with, we want our people to be at their best. And we're not offering mindfulness so they'll be more productive. This is not why I'm in it, but it's actually one of the happy, coincidences.
Totally. It's a byproduct.
It's a byproduct. Is that think of it like mental exercise. We know that physical exercise makes us happier. It makes us less stressed. It reduces anxiety. These are mental exercises that make us happier, less stressed, reduce anxiety. And honestly, we're comfortable with people going to the gym, but how much of our jobs are spent like lifting boxes? I know some people are, but in the information world, most of these engineers and product managers and marketing people and HR people, they don't need to run a 6-minute mile, but they do need to be focused and they do need to be mentally stable. And these are the tools that help enable that to happen.
What's amazing is that old aphorism of people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the idea that you're espousing is so important. And one of the happy byproducts that I've seen, you and I have a lot of confluence in our lives and our work. And as someone who's worked resiliency at various companies, including Facebook for their security and safety teams, and DigitalOcean and others, what we've seen is a happy byproduct of greater retention, reduced attrition, greater engagement. And I know that those are consistent with what your program has been finding. Have there been any other findings from a business argument? Because I think that it's so important that companies begin to go in this direction. I'm remembering back when I was in the corporate sphere myself, I pitched a presentation for the sales team.
Yeah.
I was going to give them for free a 2-hour session on positive psychological approaches to boosting sales. And it was not accepted. It's something that was so valuable and would show that the company cares and would have boosted sales, I imagine. But tell me about that. And
sure.
I'm just so delighted with your success.
I think that companies are coming around, especially in this pandemic when we're having mental health issues. It's a global crisis on loneliness and mental well-being. Companies are coming around. It's like, oh, wow, we need to do something. And this fits into the something that they can do. But when you ask me, like, what's the ROI on it? I engage, if a CEO asked me that, I would engage in a different way. I'd say like, oh, do you have a gym? Like, do you provide a gym? Okay, yeah, we do. Well, what's the ROI on the last 3 rowing machines? Can you tell me?
Such a great answer.
Or on the air conditioning, how do you decide to set it to 69 or 70 or 71? What's the ROI between 69 and 71? Because you would save a lot of money if you moved it, to 71 or even 74 or 77. Like, what's the ROI on that? Well, it's like, well, it comes back to, look, do you care about your employees or not? Well, yes, we do. But meditation? And I think about this. Look, mindfulness, think about it as mental exercise versus physical exercise. Our great grandparents did not exercise. This is a new thing.
Totally.
This is a new thing. Now, they worked hard, but they didn't do a stair stepper or run or ride their bike. They might go for a walk. So here's the thing. It's on a journey as our consciousness has changed. So a few years ago, I was with my mom. I grew up in Kansas. We were looking for something to do. We went to an antique store. And in the antique store, they had these old magazines from, a long time ago. And I wanted to buy a magazine for my birth year because I was about to turn 50. And so I bought a few from 1969, just because I wanted to see what consciousness was like when I came into the world. And so I'm reading these magazines. And yes, it's the same year that we put a man on the moon. And in that same year, there are articles about race and gender that would make us pucker today. Probably would have gotten that journalist fired. There are advertisements for cigarettes. And the pitch man, it's always a man, is a doctor. Doctor's always a man in a white coat. He's pitching nicotine as, a natural energy source. Okay, so this is the place we're coming from. In 1969, there's an article about a swim team in the Midwest who has just won a couple championships. So the journalist goes to see what is happening. And in big, bold font, it's like this. It's like athletes subject themselves to self-torture in order to win. And I'm like, what are these guys doing? And my mind is racing. I'm like, wow, what torture? Electroshock therapy? What could they possibly be doing? All right. 1969, you want to know what was so freaking far out there?
Yes.
They were strength training. They were lifting weights.
Wow.
Okay. So now you fast forward 50 years, everybody in the world mostly knows the benefits of physical exercise. We may or may not do it, but we know and we believe it and it's normal. So if you're at work and hey, Adam, what are you doing after work? Oh, I'm going to go to that TRX class in the gym. Everybody's like, yeah, cool. Maybe, or maybe not. I join you, but at least we don't think, oh, wow, that is super weird. You're going to do TRX? Whoa, you're out there.
That's far out.
But in the same way, if I said, hey, Adam, what are you doing? Oh, I'm going to check out the meditation class at 4th. Oh, okay.
Totally.
So we're on this path where it's becoming more normal. And I don't think it'll take 50 years for us to get to the point where everybody knows. Maybe not everybody does it, but everybody knows it's totally normal. It's just something that's part of the furniture.
I love that idea. And so many things have changed. I'm just thinking about the early aughts when I was kind of in the heart of my corporate career. And the mere thought of bringing these into the workplace would have been spectacularly far out. This would not have flown in so many companies. Some companies were on the kind of the leading edge. I know Ray Dalio, the great financial wizard, has been a big proponent of meditation amongst his teams. And yes, to your point, it's not kind of a direct, obvious performance booster. And yet his firm has some of the greatest financial gains of any. So I like you putting it back as a question of, what is the ROI from a rowing machine or from having a good temperature in the place? That's just brilliant. So let's get to your book because I've been chomping at the bit. I loved it so much. Full Body Yes was one of the most delightful reads I've had in some time. It combines storytelling, brilliant, hard-earned advice and wisdom that you've gained over the years, as well as science around happiness and mindfulness and practices people can actively bring into their lives. How did you hope the reader's life might change after reading your book?
Well, first of all, thank you for actually reading it.
Oh my gosh. I didn't just read it. I savored it.
Because what happens is people buy books, myself included, and they don't get read. So my number one, people ask me, what does success look like with this book? I'm like, I just want people to read it. Seriously. Because I think that there's about, I don't know exactly, around 40 stories. And they're all, like you said, hard-earned won, times I've failed, times I've been connected to something bigger, times I've maybe had some success. And I just want for each person, my hope for it was each person would have one or two stories where they go, okay, and something inside moves them. This is not a how-to book, but it's a fire starter. It's something that I hope will light a fire inside them and they go, I need to do something next. And then we can talk. Then we can talk about what's next. In each chapter, almost every chapter, I quote either Hafiz or Rumi, who are these Persian masters spiritual masters, but also masters of poetry. And these guys did not write how-to books. You don't find Rumi's 12 steps to reaching self-enlightenment. What they do is they provide this poetry, and it's like sometimes it's hard to understand, but every time after I read it, I feel like my insides have gotten rearranged. And you're like, I'm different by reading that. And I'm not saying I'm a Rumi or a Hafiz, but that would be my hope. It's like something inside got rearranged and you're like, I want more. I want something else.
A fire starter, not a how-to, but a fire starter. And indeed, the Hafiz and Rumi quotes are so gorgeous, and they all are perfect kindling for each chapter. They've been carefully selected, timeless. It's crazy when you read these quotes to think that these were written several hundred years ago, and they are so applicable today. I mean, so applicable. It's almost like they were written yesterday.
Actually, that point is really powerful because one of my favorite quotes right now is from James Clear. And just, he wrote the book Atomic Habits, and I quote him a lot. And the quote is, our lives do not rise to the level of our goals. They fall to the level of our systems, which I think is brilliant. And I use it all the time. And then I discovered this other guy named Archilochus, who essentially said the same thing 2,500 years ago.
It's absolutely incredible. And Archilochus, for those listening who don't know,
is a Greek philosopher. I don't know anything other than, the little blurb on Wikipedia or whatever, but the idea is true. And my point is that Rumi, 700 years ago-ish, probably didn't have anything original to say, probably was leaning on the masters and the teachers before him. And so I'm here to tell you that I don't have anything original to say, but I have maybe a different way to say it, a context that's different, a way of putting it in our language today in 2021 that just might spark a fire in the same way that Rumi sparked a fire in 1300 or Archilochus did, 2,500 years ago.
I love that. And the reason I started laughing after you gave the James Clear quote is I have been using that quote for the last 4 weeks in my office so many times. So it's just yet another place where you and I have some really hilarious confluence. One of the things that I appreciate most about your book is here you are, a man who has risen at a world-renowned company, and you put it on the line. You were vulnerable. You shared some of the most deeply personal, psychological, painful stories, including the one at the very beginning. And I'm wondering, how did you find the strength and conviction to share that? I'm sure that there were moments of like, do I go here or do I not go here? Yeah. You went there. How did you decide?
I had an inkling about it. And then in the moment I'm writing this, the George Floyd thing happened, right, in Minneapolis, and all the chaos, right? I wrote it in the middle of Corona time and all the chaos was happening. And what I didn't want was somebody to look at the book and go, oh, you're a rich white dude who's a VP at one of the biggest companies in the world. You've had success. Like, why should I listen to you?
Right.
When I'm blah, 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 blah. And what I know from experience is that each one of us go through life and experience pain. It has a different flavor for every one of us. Each one of us struggles and feels isolated and feels alone and feels separated from everybody else and struggles with the darkness and the light because they're both there all the time. And, with the help of my wife who said, hey, you need to get more vulnerable. I'm like, okay, well,
here's one large serving of vulnerability.
Here we go. Here's what's happening now. As we're speaking, the book's not quite out yet. I've shared it with a few hundred people. And then I'm asking them, all right, come on, tell me. It can't be a one-way street for me. I need to have a relationship with you. Like, tell me, what was the most important story to you? And here's what's happening. People are not coming back and saying, oh yeah, dude, hey, I read your book. Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's not what's happening. What's happening is people are emailing me and they're like, oh my God, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you. Because in chapter 17 or chapter 4, chapter 11, or this story, it's like, this happened. And let me tell you my story. And like, yes. Because what I know about people is we are programmed to mirror vulnerability. If I show you vulnerability, we are programmed to show vulnerability back. And when we both share, when we both kind of lower the water on our iceberg and really share who we really are, without the protection of all those filters and layers, we're more of ourself. And when we allow people to be more of their self around us, this is one of the most compassionate things we can do because they have a greater sense of their own being. And so for me, myself, I have a greater sense of my own being by writing this thing. It was totally transformational to have to go back and relive, the story you mentioned where I'm about to take my life as a 15-year-old, or some of the most horrific failures I've made in my marriage, my partnership, and as a worker, to relive those again and to be able to stand with a little bit more power or stand strongly with more balance. Finally, my life makes sense, and I hope that in the journey, it can be useful to somebody else as well.
I'm thinking about Brene Brown's great quote of, and I'll just paraphrase it, we can only be as courageous as we are willing to be vulnerable. And you embodied that. You just nailed it. The story at the very beginning where you were considering taking your own life. This is really powerful, as were so many of the other stories that you shared, including decision-making processes at the corporate level and some of the less than conventional.
Yeah, I was a little scared still this hasn't come out. So maybe my LinkedIn bosses haven't gotten to that story yet.
But I love that because there were so many lessons, including how to cultivate intuition, which we can go into. But let's talk about the concept of a full body yes. One of my all-time favorite ideas. So you couldn't have chosen a better title for the book. What is a full body yes from where you sit?
Oh, for me, the full body yes is when you know. But it's beyond the mind. It's beyond the emotions. It's beyond even the intuition. But this deep sense of knowing comes over you and all of your senses. And there's now 0% doubt. You just know something. Look, this can happen when you're picking out groceries at the grocery store. Do you want this or that? And that's fine. But it's most poignant when you've been struggling. Like you've been struggling you've been agonizing about a decision. Should I leave this relationship or stay? Should I do this job or not do this job? Whatever, these big decisions in your life. And for me, this is where it's most poignant. Do you want me to tell the orange rhino story?
Come on. It's like one of my all-time faves.
All right. So the front cover of the book has this orange rhino, this mystical orange rhino with this, a star in the middle. And I wanted something on the front cover where you look at it and you're like, what in the heck? Like, what is that? And hopefully for the right people, it's like, I got to know what this orange rhino is all about. That's why, because it's a story from the book. Okay, here's the deal. A number of years ago, I'm in my, this job, this head of operations job, and my top lieutenant is changing. He's leaving jobs. And I need to make a hire. I need to replace him.
A big hire.
A huge hire. It's the most important hire on my team. And look, to be honest, my success is going to be whether this person fails or succeeds, right? This is a big deal. And we've done all the work. We've scoured the world for candidates, and we're down to the final 2 candidates. And we've gotten everybody involved. I've gotten VPs from around the company involved in the decision-making because I want them to be part of the change management process. I want them to love the new person we put in. And we get down to the final, and we have 2 candidates, and exactly half the team says, oh, I love the first candidate, but I don't think the second candidate can do the job. And the other half of the team says, oh, you know what? I love the second candidate, and I really don't think the first candidate can do the job. Well, look, my strategy in life is I'm a pleaser. I am great at collaborating. I'm great at cooperating and getting people to work together. So this is my personal and professional nightmare.
Right.
Because I have to make the call. And no matter what I do, I'm going to
piss off 50%. 50% of the people.
Half the team. Oh, so I'm feeling, and it's, the biggest decision in my career.
Right.
And there's nothing more we can do. There's no more interviews. Both of the candidates are great. But we're at this point where you can't tell the future. You can't tell who's really going to vibe with the team. How are they going to grow? How are they going to meld? So it's all inner. And some people would say okay, I'll have to go with my gut. And this was kind of what I did, but with a twist. For me, it's about tapping into something bigger, whatever you want to call that thing. So I'm having this conversation with the something bigger, with the universe.
Totally.
I'm like, dude, and this is how we roll. I'm like, dude, I don't know. I need some help here. And I don't do this a lot. I don't. I try to figure this out on my own, but I want to sign. This time, I want to sign. And so I go into contemplation and I think of the first person. And she's this woman with long black hair. And I'm like, okay, if it's her, it's going to be. And what comes to me is long black hair wrapped into a bun with a butterfly pin attached to the hair. And I'm like, I step back. I'm like, okay. What are the chances of seeing? Okay, fine. Okay, whatever. And then if it's this other person and I think about them and they have this orange backpack that they carry around at work, if it's them, it's going to be an orange rhinoceros.
And by the way, this is going to be a sign that you're going to see out in the real world.
This is a sign that I'm going to see in the physical real world.
Yeah.
And as soon as I said it, I laughed. I'm like, what? How is that going to happen? Okay, well, whatever, fine. I'm like, okay, 24 hours, I'm watching. Let's go. And I let it go, right? I let it into the stream of the universe. And I forgot about it. And the next day, it's a Friday, it's the end of the week. Our team goes to the movies, right? It's one of the Star Wars movies has come out. So we do a team event kind of end of the day on Friday. I'm relaxing. I'm trying to let the busy of the week just kind of roll off me. I'm hanging out with my friend, talking, having popcorn. And in the previews, there's a preview for an animated movie. And for about a half a second, an orange rhinoceros trots across the screen.
Oh, God.
And first, my mind is like, whoa, was it orange or red? Maybe it's red. Like, was it kind of maroonish? Like, was that really orange? And then I let that go. And I just I felt it. Like, I closed my eyes and I felt it. And I'm like, yeah. And then I felt the decision. I'm like, okay, is it this person? And I checked in. I'm like, yes. And I got that full body yes. Like when you just know something, because what I got was the secret handshake from the universe. There was no denying. Like, I don't believe in coincidence. This was the secret handshake from the universe that says, dude, this is going to work. Like, just relax. You got this.
That is such a great story. And it wasn't merely the presence of the orange rhinoceros. It sounds like an essential part of this process was tapping in after having seen the orange rhinoceros.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes.
It's
confirming.
Mm-hmm.
It's confirming. Because here's how I think it works. Some people will say, oh, I told this story to somebody and they're like, oh, wow, what a coincidence. I'm like, oh, are you serious? Really? Like, that's your takeaway, that this was a coincidence? And so I think that if you don't believe this is how life works, then this is how your life works. I mean, in fact, that it won't happen if this is how you think life works. But if you believe that this is how life works, then this is how life works. And so if you ask for a sign and you get it, and then you don't act on it, well, don't count on getting too many more signs. You got to close the loop. You got to then take action. It's a partnership.
So amazing. One of the things that I find myself a little baffled by is here you are, a person who's got a BS, a bachelor's of science. You're a scientist in background. And yet you're saying that there's a non-mutually exclusive reality of this other world that we cannot see, that we do not know the way we might know through science.
Yes. So do you know the definition of a mystic? I did not until recently.
I don't.
So here's what a mystic is. Okay, I'm going to read the definition because I found it recently, so I want to get it right. A mystic is either one, a person who seeks by contemplation and self-surrender to obtain unity with or absorption into the deity or the absolute. Okay, that's probably what we think about being a mystic. But two is, or who believes in the spiritual apprehension of truths that are beyond the intellect. That's me. I think that there are truths that are beyond the intellect. And I can hold it all. I can be a scientist. I can study physics and chemistry. And there's something else that's beyond the intellect, that's beyond the proven. It's like, for me, there's all these stories of people having near-death experiences. They're on a hospital bed and some flavor of, oh, for a while I was dead. I was dead on the table. But what was happening is I was crossing over this bridge of light. And wow, I really wanted to go there, but I heard this voice back at my body and I'm like, oh, damn, I got to go back. Thousands of people have had something similar.
Yes, themes and variations on this.
Yeah, themes and variation of the thing, right? Now, a scientist will go, well, really what's happening is there's these chemicals in our brains that are causing blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, seriously? Okay, yes, that may be true, but why can't both things be true?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't both things be? Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real.
And perhaps we will have scientific measuring methods in the future more akin to those that measured nicotine and its deleterious effects 50 years from now, exactly. In as much as we had a doctor in a white suit and had evidence at that time, or I should say we had support for the idea that weightlifting might be torture.
Yeah.
So who knows what's on the horizon, but I really needed to highlight the idea that it wasn't merely the presence of the orange rhinoceros. It was also your willingness to recognize your body experience after seeing it.
Yes. Yes. To check in, right? So here's a really simple thing. You may use this with your clients. We haven't talked about this, but one thing I use with folks is like to make a decision. Let's say you're trying to decide between A and B. And yeah, it could be your breakfast cereal, but it could be something really serious. Should I take job A and B, or this candidate A or B, or whatever these big life decisions are? So here's how it works. And maybe you want to try this at home. Like think of two things that you're trying to decide between. All right. So think about thing A and imagine you've already decided. You've already decided in your mind that you've chosen thing A, and get a sense of what that's like to have. This is your life. You've already decided it. And now take a really deep breath in and a really deep breath out. I just see how you feel with your decision. And then you pause. Now wipe it clean. Let that go. Take the taster in between. And now think of the second thing you're going to decide. And now make it real that you've already decided on thing two. This is your life. You have chosen this and this is your life. And imagine just a little taste of what your life is going to be like with thing two, decision two. Now take a really deep breath in and a long exhale out. And just see in your body which one feels right. Now, if you can do that, you are a mystic. Because you just found a truth that was beyond the intellect. Now, what is that exactly? I don't think we really know. You could say it was your gut. You could say it's God. Maybe there's part science. Maybe there's something else. We don't know. And no amount of me telling you what it is going to make it any different or real for you. But you know, when you take those two breaths, I guarantee you know which one inside you feels right.
Oh, and your openness to accepting various points of data. I think you know that I gave a TEDx talk on emotions. It was called Emotions, Data Men Miss. And I know you to be, of course, an engineer by training. And oftentimes the idea of engineering and emotions and being open to that realm is a bit of a stretch. And yet here you are, a guy who came from
hashtag
understatement. And here you are, a dude from rural Kansas whose closest fast food was an hour away and who probably didn't grow up in an environment that was very touchy-feely. You grew up on a farm, and also a fact. And you're also a man who's been willing to take the time to tap into his emotions, that emotions have been a really important data point in your life. And I'm wondering, how did you cultivate a relationship with your emotions, and what has been the benefit of doing so?
I'll maybe start in a meta way. And that is saying that, yes, I wear all these labels, as you have pointed out, and they're fair. They're all true. I grew up on a farm in super rural Kansas in a family that did not talk about their emotions at all. You know, I grew up in a fairly straight-laced, super conservative way, and found this super, some people would say super hippie, spiritual path to follow. And so what I would say is that regardless of any of our circumstances, we can hold it all. This became apparent to me during the George Floyd thing. At the same time the George Floyd stuff was happening, my daughter was graduating from high school. And we were going through this time where it's like, wow, she was saying, I don't know what to do. Because on the one hand, there's all these parties or, pseudo parties that are happening because we couldn't really have parties, but celebrations about being a graduate. And there was all this mess in the world where people suffering and having tear gas and all this stuff. So what I know of us as humans is we are capable of holding it all. Every one of our emotions, we are capable of holding the space to have the pain and suffering and be aware of it, of what's going on in the world at large or in our world as a self. And in that same moment in time, celebrate the good things that are happening. Celebrate each of our individual wins. So that's what I know at the meta level is we are capable of doing it all. So me, myself, oh man, I don't know. I mean, partly I think I was programmed that way. It's just who I was. And I was interested in self-exploration at a very young age. I had all these big questions about life, about the divine. When I was 10, 11 years old, I was seeking, and so that's just how I'm wired. And over time, each experience for me has been about unpacking, the question, who am I? I've always wanted to know. I've always been interested in all the psychological tests you can take, from Myers-Briggs to the AVA to standardized tests like the ACT or the SAT or whatever, the Enneagram, because each one of them gave me a different opening, shined a little bit different light on that question, who am I?
I'm thinking about you and the totality of you. There's so many things that your emotions have opened up, so much color in your life. You're a guitarist and a singer, and you are a photographer and a traveler and a little league coach and a husband. And you've taken all of these roles, I'm just naming a few of them, so seriously and allowed emotions to play a big part in each of these roles in your life. And they've added so much color, and they've actually led you from where I sit, and tell me if you agree, to an insurance policy that you would be alive while you were alive.
I wasn't sure where you were going with the insurance policy. Yeah. I would maybe say, let me take it in a different way, because I'm going to say it's a little bit different than emotion, although that plays a part in it. Here's what I think is happening. And this is my mental model for how the world works. I think that this is just me talking, right?
Totally.
I think that we are soul, like this pure spark of the thing, a pure spark of the divine. And we're a singular drop in the giant ocean of the thing, of the divine. But to get around here on earth, we have this physical body. We have a mental body. We have an emotional body. And these act as shields or sheaths or tools so that we can get around. And most of the time, what we see in each other are these tools. But when we are vulnerable, what we're doing is we're letting those guards down. We're saying, look, in this moment, I'm going to show you who I really am. And it's in our language. When we talk about Adam, Adam's doing his hobby. Wow, he really lit up. I think about that language. What are we saying? Oh, well, he didn't light up. What happened is we're seeing his true self. We're seeing it with the shields lowered. And so his light can actually shine through this mess that we've put around him so that he can get around. And so the more we refine ourselves, the more we are in touch with our own deepest self, that true self where we get the full body yes, the more our light shines. And the more our light shines, because we mirror vulnerability as people, other people lower their barriers as well, and they shine as well. And so I think this is the most compassionate thing that we can do is first, and this is our job in the world, first develop yourself, figure out how to shine your own light. And by doing so, then you'll light up everybody else around you.
That's so beautiful. And I love that James Clear quote, because basically, if we allow for the new system to allow for greater compassion, intimacy, vulnerability, that even when we fall to higher levels than we would have fallen earlier.
That's exactly right. It's that whole, all of life's truths can be reduced to a cheesy thing that has been a poster.
Like a successory, like one of those things that you used to see exactly. In somebody's office.
If we aim for the stars, if we fall short, we'll be at the moon, or, one of those things.
Right.
But it's true. It's true. If we aim super high, if we go for the biggest thing, if we fail just a little bit, wow, look how far we got.
Exactly. And if compassion and safety, like one of the things that I know that you and I share in common is the recognition that the safety within an organization will increase the productivity of all stakeholders. And yet, to your earlier point, it's basically akin more to, let's just keep the temperature at a nice, comfortable level. And yet such institutions really instill that awareness, that as almost as a policy to have safety as a key measure for its people.
Yes. What I will tell people is I'm not an expert other than anything except my own experience. I'm an expert in my own experience. And my experience is at LinkedIn. And so here's my experience at LinkedIn. The CEO will talk openly about his experience, talk about compassion, and that creates an umbrella. So then the next level down, they will also, again, because we've lowered the barriers, they will also talk about things that are really vulnerable to them. And because they're doing so, people below them, it's a cascading effect. Down to the point where we have employee resource groups for different races or different ethnicities or different backgrounds, different abilities. And beyond that, we have things like music groups or creative writing groups and all these things. And people feel lit up because it's like, wow, I get to talk about my creative writing at work with other people at work. think about the last time you got to share with somebody, like you got to tell your story for 20 minutes about the thing you loved most, whatever it was. And you recognize in yourself that you are lighting up and how alive you feel. Now imagine doing that at work and going back to work on your Excel spreadsheet or your product design or whatever you're doing. You're going to be lit up. You're going to carry that forward into the work that you're doing. So what I would say, like, this is not at all a waste of time. This is the furthest thing away from like a waste of time. This is how, look, in a really crass way, this is how you get the most out of your employees.
Right.
And this is not what I'm doing. Like, I don't do this work. So, we can improve productivity by 11% and decrease defect. Like, yeah, that's a happy byproduct. This is how you win. This is how you build a company.
And it sounds like it transcends the spreadsheet. It's really about, this is how you be good in life.
Yeah.
This is how everyone wins.
Yes.
And this is how we go from me to we, to use something that you also seem to like to say.
Because think about it. When we talked, this example I gave as a person, if I'm this little sphere and I get to the point where my light shines brighter, I'm more of who I really am. I'm more creative and capable. Now imagine a company is the same. It's just another formation of an organism. All the company is in LinkedIn's case, the 15,000 of us. And so it shares a consciousness. And as we rise in consciousness and we become more of our true selves, we become more capable and creative and more aware of others, more aware of our customers, more aware of ourselves. You think we're going to do better in the world? Questionably.
Agreed.
Unquestionably.
Scott, before I get to my final question, I've got just a couple more. But the first one is, I love the idea of seeing somebody light up. And one of the things that the listener may not know is that you are, at least in my estimation, a master question asker. You ask great questions, not the kind of questions that just yield really boring data from somebody, but you can really conjure up a doozy that really cultivate great answers and really cause a person to light up. What are some of your favorite questions?
You want to know my favorite question, right? It's totally silly.
Totally.
So there's a two-part question. The first part question is, if you could have any animal for a pet, and it would, you could be totally in sync with it and it would do whatever you wanted to do, like you were mind melded, what would that animal be?
I love that question.
And I was doing this with a friend the other day, and he's like, whoa. He got so excited, like he couldn't contain himself. He goes, yes, it would be a dolphin. I just started laughing. I'm like, dude, tell me how that's going to work. Like, are you going to carry your dolphin around on wheels with this little plexiglass aquarium? And we laughed about that for 10. He's like, I don't care. It would just be awesome. And so I decided that mine would be a lion because, seriously, imagine mountain biking with my lion running in front of me, or imagine like in the backyard where the sun is, like your cat hangs out where the sun shines.
Right,
imagine
totally.
Like snuggling up with your head up against the lion's belly.
That would be amazing. And you light up as you answer that question.
Oh, totally. Oh, but the second part of the question, and here's where it gets deep, is, all right, if you had to be a pet for one of these animals, who would you be a pet for? And this is a new question for me, but what I'm finding is people really don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, that one is a baffling one.
Because they've never thought that another animal could be of a higher consciousness than them.
So it really causes a person to escape the shackles of their human existence and imagine and empathize with the existence of another being.
Because honestly, we talk about progression and we always see ourselves at the top of the food chain of evolution. But who's to say in terms of consciousness, right? In terms of lighting up, do you think humans are at the top of that? I think this is the question. Because dogs are pretty good at unconditional love. And that's what we're all trying to get to. Maybe dogs are at the top of the consciousness food chain, or maybe dolphins are. I don't know. There's the question.
I love that. And the quality of the questions, kind of determines the quality of our lives in so many ways, whether they're the ones that we ask ourselves or the ones that we ask when we're keeping company of somebody for a limited time. We have the delight of somebody else's presence, and to ask really good questions like the ones that you suggest, I think are phenomenal. So I just wanted to tip my hat. I'm going to go to the last question, and that is the fantastical question. All right. All of a sudden you wake up, you are conferred with magical powers.
Oh, I know. No, I'm waiting for you to finish.
And you are able to give all of humanity a skill,
Yeah.
what would that skill be? And what do you imagine would be the effect on society at large, as well as the individuals within it?
Yeah, for sure. So I thought you were headed to basically, if I could have any superpower, what would I have? And it's kind of the same question. And I used to answer this with invisibility. But much like my friend with the dolphin, like, what am I going to do with that? Like,
Right.
And I realized how impractical it was. Like, if I'm biking around, I'm just going to get driven over by a car. Like this is, so I had to drop that. But I think if I had any superpower, it would be communication, the ability to speak any language, but beyond any language fluently. Like, I want to be able to communicate with animals, with trees, with anything that has a consciousness. Like, how cool would that be on their level? And so then imagine if everyone in the world could communicate on each other's level, if we could really drop the barriers and just be soul to soul and communicate at that level. Wow.
That would be amazing. What's your fantasy of how that would play out? Like, how might we benefit? How might the individual benefit?
And I think this is what we're doing every day. I don't think, and maybe there's a place somewhere where that exists, but essentially this is the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to learn how to do that, to learn how to truly give and receive love, unconditional, divine love. And first, that means dropping our own barriers, our own self, our own mess, so that our own light shines through. And then it's recognizing that light in other people and doing whatever you can to light that up in them, and seeing that there's really, at the end of the day, from that light to light perspective, there is no separation between us.
Well, what a profound note to end on, Scott. It has been such a pleasure to get to hang with you and to really talk about your book and your life and the way you see the world. I'm positive that my listeners will benefit tremendously from hearing you.
Thank you for providing the space. This has been awesome. And thank you for doing what you're doing in the world. I appreciate you.
Right on, dude. This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.